Hey, everybody, it's Carter Froelich. And our mission at Launch Development Finance Advisors is to be a hero to the land development and home building community. We do that through a lot of different ways, but one of the ways that I want to give back to the industry is to be able to share our experience as well as the experience of a myriad of different players in our industry, their experience, what they've learned, what they're doing, and just the knowledge that they have to provide to the industry. With that having been said, I hope you enjoy this episode. And if there's anything that we can do at launch to help you finance infrastructure, reduce costs, mitigate risk, all with the goal of enhancing project profitability and returns, please give us a call at the contact information in the show notes.
Welcome to the Land to Lots podcast, powered by Launch Development Finance Advisors. And now your host, Carter Froelich.
Welcome back to my continuing conversation with Ross Martin and MMDs and the importance they play in financing infrastructure in Texas. So an MMD can do the assessments, it can do the ad valorem. May it also assess fees and charges for public infrastructure? Is that an additional power that an MMD has?
It has the same authority as a Chapter 49 district. So yes, it can
Okay.
reasonable fees and charges for its public improvements or for the use of those public improvements.
Yeah, because that there may be ways to, and we haven't talked about this. We're way off script right now, but that's what the Villages does with their CDDs and their amenity fees. You know, that typically all their amenities are open to the public, and then they collect that monthly user fee for all their amenities, and they issue bonds off of it. And that's where they got that's where there were some challenges. And are these tax exempt or taxable? And they were doing taxable at one point, and then they went back to tax. I think they're back at tax exempt. It's been a while since I checked, but that might be an idea for, pulling some more horsepower out of an MMD.
Yeah, and certainly, everyone's looking at those. Again, once we've gotten the easy stuff out of the way, then we go to things that are a little more brain damage. But the other point is the more the MMD can finance of the public improvements, then the more the developer has to spend on eye candy.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have that interplay as well.
Yeah, and that's where we say, what do we need to get to a revenue event? And sure, amenity centers, they can be phased. We have to build something initially, but we absolutely need to be able to turn on taps, flush toilets, and get people to their houses. First things first, and then the rest is, like you said, gravy. What is a typical bond term? I want to get to some of the specifics, and then we're going to get into some more fun stuff. But the typical bond term for an MMD assessment and GO?
25 to 30 years. Looking very similar to a MUD or PID bond.
Yep.
In fact,
and we talked about the governance. You just want to get a little bit more detailed on the initial board and how that changes over the life of the MMD.
Correct. Well, you have two ways that you can have MMD governance. You can have a board that's appointed by the city council from candidates that are proposed by the landowner. And traditionally, that was how statutory Chapter 375 MMDs worked. A lot of the Houston in-city MMDs have that governance structure. Again, in 2023, now you can have an elected board similar to a MUD. From a legislative perspective, if you're drafting a special act, there is a very strong preference for an elected board that will be governed by its residents. So we see the vast majority of them with elected boards.
Okay, and the other question that I have related to the elected boards, when you're setting up an MMD, are you thinking about what happens when the composition of the board changes? So are you setting up multiple MMDs within a master plan? How are you looking at the whole governance and control as it relates to a large master plan community and that potentially changing over time?
Yeah, we're looking at it the same as we would, an ETJ MUD with, multi-thousand acre project. You have You have a master district that holds the major contracts that can issue the bonds in order to, again, provide that certainty going forward that, you know, you have an overarching entity there
Mhm.
that's running the show, and then you have the other districts that are setting their tax rates, setting, they may be setting water and sewer rates. So they have control as well, but the main control resides with the district that holds all the contracts. You're doing that in order to again provide that certainty. Secondarily, we're working on a lot of projects in the ETJ right now
Mhm.
where we have an agreement with the city that at some point we will annex the district or portions of the district
Mhm.
once the developer has been repaid from bonds by the district. So
Mhm.
once that happens, the city then would have the option to annex either the entirety of the project or in pieces. So, we have situations where we've divided off districts. So your district that gets developed first can annex, and then you go down the list until
Yep.
finally the entire thing is
Thing
annexed.
is it. And so to that end, and we're saying, hey, you can annex once we get repaid.
Right.
Is that a nominal dollar at that point? Meaning for this first sliver of the master plan that we're annexing from the ETJ into the city, it's our requirement for reimbursement prior to annexation is 100 million, just making up a number. When that number is achieved, is that when it's coming into the incorporated boundaries of the city?
Yeah, it's normally when the developer has been repaid for the facilities to be financed by that district, then the
Okay, yeah.
city has the option to annex, because a lot of times the city may have the option to annex, they may want to, they may not, because
Yeah.
although the developers have been repaid, the debt is still outstanding. So if they annex it, then they're responsible for that debt. So they need to model out, okay, I'm annexing this. I have, this much property tax revenue that'll be coming in, but we also have an obligation here. And how does
Right.
that
Yeah.
work out?
It, it,
One
it,
case study we did, it wasn't an MMD, but we worked on Castle Hills in Louisville for
yeah.
many years. And, at one point, the city looked at the entirety of the districts, and that was a 2,000-acre master plan that was in the ETJ, and said, we can make the numbers work to annex this. Our residents were, on all of our boards. They were part of the process. They agreed.
Okay.
And one day it was annexed and all the districts were gone, and it's a great project and it's in city now.
Okay.
But the
And,
developer was repaid his funds.
and that's what I was going to ask you. How do the residents react to that? But you're right, they would be on the boards, they would be part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I guess what I was trying to get at is uh in, so in the agreement, just to ensure that the developer is hitting a number that matches their pro forma, we're saying we got to get paid for this roadway, this water, this sewer, this storm drain. And are you being very specific in what that infrastructure is, in leaving out the cost, or how are you structuring that within the agreement? And this is just me because I want to learn from you.
Some of them are very specific, and normally
Yeah,
they're specific because they're specific, either offsite or major infrastructure that needs to get constructed. And in the agreement, the city wants to know that that's going to be completed.
yeah,
We usually leave the final reimbursement number pretty open ended,
yeah.
because one, we don't know what those costs are going to
I'm
look
sorry.
like at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And the point of the district is that we have the district in order for the developer to put up his money, and then we reimburse. And
Right.
we have to accomplish that goal before we annex. A city also succeeds to the bonding authority of the district. So if you have a ETJ MMD that's issuing tax bonds, uh, we've also seen situations where the city has said, we'd like to annex it now. We haven't completely repaid the developer, but we're going to take on that obligation so that we can annex it. We worked with a town in North Texas that did that.
Okay.
And it was successful.
When the infrastructure is being constructed, is it, and it has been completed, let's say we're in the city right now, is
Mhm.
that then being dedicated over to the city for ongoing operations and maintenance, or does the MMD still operate that? Uh, it, assuming that we're on city water sewer, let's just use
Yeah.
that for an example. I'm just,
Typically, we're conveying everything to the city. We have that noted either by
okay,
separate conveyance or by plat note that it'll be financed by the MMD.
okay,
Uh, but then it's conveyed to the city for operation and maintenance because we are in the city. And to your point, they're the water and sewer provider. They're
yep.
collecting retail water and sewer revenues. And so they're the appropriate party to maintain them.
And same with roads.
Yes.
And now we're in the ETJ, same question, using city water sewer, but we're in the ETJ. So water and sewer is conveyed upon completion to the city and the roads to the county.
No, the roads remain with the MMD. Most counties
MMD,
don't want to
got it.
take
Yeah,
roads because they don't want to. They don't want
yeah.
to do curb and
Okay,
gutter concrete streets. So in the ETJ, we'd be maintaining them.
good, good. Just wanted to make that distinction.
Mhm.
So is there anything else, any experiences that you've run into with a MMD in the city that you'd like to share with the listeners? And then we're going to go the ETJ and then the county. So yeah, and just see if there's any derivations as we move on this spectrum.
Um, Probably the experience that I have seen, and I will say this for both city and ETJ,
Hmm.
have seen a lot of willingness of the cities to partner with the developers
Yeah,
and keep an open mind towards the use of the tool. For a long time, we didn't really do a lot of in-city districts. There were
yeah,
some in-city MUDs. Certainly PIDs, are mostly in-city. So,
yeah,
we've
yeah,
and we worked on a lot of those. But the in-city MMDs, I've probably been a little surprised at the acceptance of it
right.
and the understanding of this is what we need to do and everybody coming together and getting a great project.
Well, what I have found, and here again, I haven't had anybody in Texas tell me this, but I have heard it in other cities where the cities are their city council ex officio is managing the district and the city staff is managing the district. So rather than one city that they're managing, they may be managing 15
Mhm.
because there's multiple districts that they have to be responsible for. And they have told us off the record, this is the city staff, we really don't like this, because we don't like carrying water for the developers, meaning we don't like to do their work of administering their districts. And the city council ex officio doesn't like homeowners calling them going, why the hell did my property taxes, go up, even though their tax rates are the same, you know? And so have you seen that same conversation with cities in Texas related to the PID versus the MMD? PID, we got to do the work. Uh, MMD, we don't. Could that be some of the reason for the change or not? What
I
do
think
you think?
I think that's a little bit of it.
Yeah,
If you've had cities that have done a lot of PIDs, I mean, it's work on the staff. It's work on the underwriting and the bond issuance.
yeah.
So some cities are willing to put that on the MMD, of course, with the appropriate contractual obligations
Hmm.
in both in any in-city district, in-city MUD, in-city PID, in-city MMD. You will always have the conversation with the city about, okay, what are my tax and assessment rates going to look like?
Yeah,
Because I do not want my residents calling later and saying, why
yeah,
do I have this?
yeah.
Which is why a lot of cities require, that these be, above average developments and
Oh yeah,
reviews
right,
because
right.
they're anticipating that call too.
So is part of that conversation, and we have some cities in different states, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll give you a district, but we want enhanced amenities, whatever that means. And no matter what you give them, it's never enough. They want more, more, more. And are there a lot of those conversations that you're seeing occurring as it relates to the MMD? Yeah, we'll give you an MMD, but we want it to be your words above, you know, above average quality, or whatever term they're utilizing.
Yes. I mean, I think that's true for any district,
Yeah, yeah,
especially an in-city district. The city will want to see an above average
yeah,
development.
yeah,
They'll want to see infrastructure costs challenges met.
yeah.
That's part of the use of the tool. But the developer's also going to say, hey, I'd like some TIRZ money to help with this infrastructure as well.
Sure.
I'm going to do a great development and I'm glad to put that in my agreement.
Right.
But, we also have to agree how much, infrastructure
Agreed.
money there's going to be here.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a little bit of an educational process too. Nobody has a greater desire to make a quality, impactful community than the landowners and developers because they have a lot of money at risk. At least, I can speak for our clients and our collective clients together. Everybody wants to do a really good job. They're very mindful of that. They want to create great places for people, and obviously it's going to enhance their absorption and price and pace over time. So, yeah. The let's go to the county now. I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, you only can do an MMD in the city or in the ETJ." What if we're outside of the ETJ in the county? Can I do an MMD?
So the statute, 375 local government code says that part of the application requirement is a support resolution from the city.
Hmm.
So it leads you down the path of, you would do it on the corporate limits or the ETJ.
Hmm.
The question is then, okay, I'm not in a city. So why would I need a support resolution from a city if I'm not in one? Can I just proceed to use the tool?
Yeah.
And my understanding is that that's occurring. So the plain reading of the statute would probably lead you to say corporate limits or ETJ, but in the instance where you're in the county and you want to use the tool, I
Yeah.
think you could do it. The hard part and probably the biggest downside to the MMDs right now is they don't have eminent domain authority. So when I'm talking to a developer about doing an MMD and we need the MMD to go, put in underground water and sewer lines from point A to point B, I need a city, or somebody with eminent domain authority
Hmm.
to help with that.
Hmm.
If there's no city and we're in the county and they say we need to go 3 miles from here to there to get to a sewer plant, that MMD does not have that authority to do that
Hmm.
unless you create it legislatively. And even the legislative MMDs a lot of times don't get the votes right now to
Yeah.
get domain authority. So that's something you have to look into, is what kind of authority do you need? And on a lot of times on a county deal, do you particularly need the expanded authority of the MMD, or are
Yeah.
you going to use a MUD, use
Mud.
your domain, and go from there?
Yeah. And probably the only reason to do that would be is if you needed perhaps an assessment, but have the forward funding launch bonds change that at all to potentially accelerate some of that cash forward where to replace what would normally have been, or to at least help supplant, the financial horsepower of an assessment.
Yes, I mean that's been a big change as well.
Yeah.
That that if you can do a MUD and you can use a forward funding like a launch bond and get money, upfront to help you with the construction costs. That's been a big change as well. I mean, that to me is one of just overall, that's been one of the biggest changes in districts is you can use forward funding when you're doing an
Mhm.
ad valorem tax bond. You can
Yep.
issue assessment bonds. You have these tools that help
Yep.
you, replace loans or equity to get these projects done quicker, and with less cost.
So as I haven't worked on an MMD in the county. I'm not, but have you or are others working on them that we can at least point to and said, hey, in XYZ county, there's an MMD that's issuing debt. Yeah.
There
So
are MMDs created
okay.
in the unincorporated area of the counties.
Okay.
Now, personally, I've only created them via special legislative act, but they
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And so we can do it. But we just go through the legislature to get it done. That kind of.
correct.
Okay, great, great. Because I'm just trying to make sure that all our listeners in Texas have all of the arrows in their quiver so that they can, or all the screwdrivers so that they can think about financing infrastructure differently. So when it comes to MMDs, and then I'm going to go to any kind of district, what has been your biggest learning experience, Ross?
Every day is a learning experience.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the benefits we get for showing up at work, right? We get to
uh,
learn. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just, especially when you're working with a MUD or an MMD and your general counsel to the district, you
Yeah.
get every question you can imagine on a daily basis, and so that has been, it's fun. It's very fun because every
Yeah,
day is different. But it's challenging as well. Um, the different tools that we have at our disposal have really changed things quite a bit.
yeah,
But it also introduces a level of complexity there that
yeah,
you have so many options. And, when you started the podcast, you were talking the alphabet soup of stuff that we work on. It's true.
yeah,
And it's great because it gives us a lot of options.
yeah.
But things can get pretty complex too. So that's a fun challenge, but it's a little bit like a Rubik's Cube sometimes.
Yeah. When somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Ross, I've got land in X," it may be in the city, maybe in the ETJ, maybe in the county, and I need to finance infrastructure. How do you go about assessing what they're really asking you and drill down into what would be the best recommendation for them? Sometimes they may be limited to one choice, but just curious what your approach is.
My usual approach is to get on the phone and not do it
Hmm.
all by email,
Yep.
and find out what are the goals of the project, where are my utilities coming from, where ETJ or city limits am I in, or am I in a county? Because as we have 200 plus municipalities in North Texas alone. Each of them have their own flavor. Every county has its own flavor. Some really like this structure. Some really like
Yeah.
that structure. Some will absolutely not want you to do one structure and absolutely will welcome another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or one of them has water, one of them doesn't. So it's really on a case by case basis. Just building up this institutional knowledge of working with the
Yeah.
cities and the counties over the years and kind of knowing what's the best way to move forward that you have the best chance of success, because you don't want to go
Yeah.
in there either and just have a fight on your
Yeah.
hands. A
Yeah.
lot of times there's a way to get there that involves cooperation, and just knowing what the other parties want,
Yeah.
so that we can get this deal done.
And that's I'm used to working in states that aren't as friendly as Texas. And what I always, okay, let's just lay our cards on the table. What problems do you want to solve, city or county? And then here are the problems we're trying to solve, and how do we collaboratively work together to make sure everybody's addressing their issues, And
Yes.
so yeah, and like you said, you can spend a lot of time fighting, or you can get the deal done and move on, if working collaboratively. So great
That's right.
advice.
And that, the 2038 ETJ removals have
Yeah, I
really
was going to ask you about that.
changed a lot of that conversation. I think initially it was met with a lot of trepidation, but it has really sparked a lot of good conversations.
Hmm.
And I feel like gotten a lot of deals done that would have been at a stalemate for a really long time, and good for both parties. There are some parcels that are in the ETJ of one city that I'll file a 2038 and the city will say, "Oh yeah, I was never going to serve that. It
Yeah,
should be in that other city. Go ahead and go."
yeah,
Other times it's just the prelude to a larger conversation where they say, "All right, we got your petition. Come on in. Let's talk about it."
right.
And I've been very surprised. Like sometimes
That's
we
great.
recently did a project with the city, and the city had water capacity, and they said, look, a lot of people just don't come and talk to us. We'd love to talk to you, and we got a development agreement done on a 2,000 acre MPC, and it's going to be great. So,
Oh, wow. Awesome.
sparking those conversations, I think, is really important.
Now, are there current legal actions going on in the state related to 2038? Do you have any updates on that? And for our listeners, and this is going to get old at some point, the podcast we're speaking at in November of 2025.
Yeah, I mean, there's still an outstanding lawsuit, to my
Mhm.
understanding, with the cities regarding 2038 that's kind of wending its way around.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't anticipate that would be the last, but I do feel like, just from a practical standpoint, the most of the time I file a 2038, I get a letter back from a city saying, yes, we acknowledge that you're out of the ETJ. I I think that will continue. The law was tweaked a little bit in the last legislative session,
Mhm.
and you may see that as well going forward. But there's clear legislative intent for that ETJ removal to continue.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think it will.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Great. Thanks for that. Uh, Going back, and I'm going to go back to your law school days or to your a mentor in the legal profession or a developer. What's the best advice anybody ever told you, Ross?
Read the statute.
No kidding.
I
I
mean,
mean, that is great. I mean,
it's amazing. And so I
exactly.
started out. I was going to be a litigator, and that
Mhm.
was my plan. I had a job offer at a big litigation firm here in Dallas, and my father was a longtime public finance lawyer, Paul
Yeah,
Martin, and he was bond counsel to Denton County Freshwater Supply District number 6. And so he
yeah.
invited me to the closing dinner when I was in law school, so I could, get a decent meal
Mhm.
and meet some people. And I met a guy named Clay Crawford, who had his own firm at the time. He's with ABHR now.
Yeah.
Uh, and Clay and I
Wonderful.
met, and
Yeah.
he said, "Before you take that job, I want to take you to lunch." So he and I went to Dunstan's over on Lovers Lane and talked about districts. And you know, here I am. But I think I've had four very well respected lawyers tell me read the statute. When I
Yeah.
was younger,
Yeah.
because it is amazing. I mean, I've read Chapter 49 of the Water Code a million times. But every time you get in there and just reread it, your
Yeah.
mind sometimes plays tricks on you. You think things are there,
Yeah.
you either reread it and realize, okay, this is exactly what it says, or you reread it again and you're like, wow, that opened a whole new door that I hadn't
Yeah.
really thought about before. So that's the best advice I ever got. And that's what I say to a lot of our lawyers here is read the
Yeah.
statute.
Now that's amazing. And
Important.
I and we're finance guys, we're not attorneys. And I always tell our folks you have to understand the statutes. I used to carry it around in a three-ring binder to all my meetings, and I would open it up with the attorneys and go, well, that's not what the CFD statute in Arizona says, or whatever statute. And I would just read it to them because you're so absolutely right. People have a tendency to think it says something and they don't look at it because they think they know it.
Hmm.
And to your point, maybe they know it, maybe they don't, and the statute opens up different possibilities depending upon what the situation is. Yeah, just like what I think you just told me,
Yeah,
is
no,
be-
that's absolutely right. It's
yeah,
good to double check yourself, and it's also good to read it every once in a while and just see if
yeah,
through the benefit of experience, like, okay, wow, I didn't realize this door now opened. Oh, I,
yeah,
I have this interpretation now. So
exactly.
it's always good to just get in there and read it again.
Well, and I can't say, from working all over the country, Texas by far is the greatest place to do what we do. And it's great to work with professionals like you and having all the tools. And the beauty of Texas is you use all of the different tools, the alphabet soup we talked about up front.
Yeah, that's been a big change is just to have all these tools at our disposal, and we need all of them. I mean,
Yeah.
we use every one of them every day: MUDs, PIDs, MMDs, because
Yep.
every project's different. The goals of every financing are
Yeah.
different. Every city's different.
Yeah.
So it's been that's been the biggest change that I've really enjoyed is just having a lot of different arrows in the quiver to solve these problems, and I think we need all of them.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. We're getting towards the end. A couple more questions, and this is the last one. Is there anything that keeps you up at night that, as it relates to our space, what's going on in Texas? It could be the economy, it could be legal issues, anything, or are you sleeping pretty well?
I sleep pretty well. The thing that I worry about quite a bit is there's a lot of kind of negative discussion around MUDs or MMDs,
Hmm.
which I feel like isn't particularly justified. And these are necessary tools for development.
Yeah,
They are, and we're going to continue to see them. And for the most part, they run beautifully. They're heavily regulated.
yeah,
All the bonds have to go to the attorney general or subject to the continuing supervision of the TCQ. There's once people really get into the operation of the district, they understand how
yeah,
much regulation goes into it, how dedicated the professionals are, and the great work that we do. But I
yeah,
think from the outside, there's a lot of noise around it, and that can keep me up at night a little bit. Also, there's a um, continuing regulation of property tax, which I completely understand. Nobody likes to pay property taxes,
yeah,
but probably what concerns me on a lot of that is just unintended consequences.
yeah,
we're very lucky in Texas in that we have legislators and legislative staffs that deeply understand these districts,
Mhm.
understand the need for them and how they need to operate.
Yeah.
Uh, but probably my biggest concern is all of us as a community and as the legislature agree that we need to pass a law around taxes or assessments. And then we realize a year later what the unintended consequences
Yeah.
are. So that keeps me up at night a little bit. And
Yeah.
during the legislative session, everything's flying around all the time, so you can turn around and find out later that maybe
Yeah.
that wasn't a great idea.
Yeah. Our crystal balls sometimes aren't as clear as we would like them to be with the unintended consequences. Absolutely.
That's correct.
Ross, I really appreciate you taking the time. And for our listeners, I'm going to include all of Ross's contact information. Should you care to get in touch with Ross and talk about financing options for your project. Ross, any closing comments before we say adieu?
Well, I would say thank you very much for having me on today. It's always great to talk to you, Carter, and I would encourage everybody to talk to Carter about financing options as well.
Great. Thanks for that, Ross. I appreciate it. And if you've enjoyed today's podcast, I encourage you to subscribe to the Land to Lots podcast wherever you get your podcast. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to the Land to Lots podcast with Carter Froelich. Follow us wherever you find your podcast to never miss a new episode.